Presented by Prize Picks. $100 match on your first deposit when you use the promo code. Welcome to Light Years. I got a special guest. I got a guy from KRON4, still on the injury list, injured reserve, but fighting through it and joining us. Jason, how you doing, man?
What's up, man? Yeah, day by day going through the rehab process and, go back into the studio on Monday and ready to just get back to the daily life things that I haven't been doing for the last almost month.
Yeah, now that you're down in Achilles, so you can probably relate to Klay Thompson because that's all we're going to be talking about for the next. I don't know. Wait, this has been. Let me reframe it for everyone who's not super online and has not been up to date on the happenings around one Klay Thompson. We're recording this Monday, June 17th. We do not know if the Boston Celtics have won and officially free agency period is on or not yet, but it's getting to that point where more and more leaks are coming out and people are starting to speculate about who might move where, who's OKC going to sign, who's getting a max, that sort of thing. And Klay Thompson, who the Warriors did not re-sign last year, first, noticeably to all the Warrior fans, unfollowed the Warriors. And if I may take it a step farther, took down some pictures of him holding up the 2022 championship trophy with his teammates, started scrubbing Warriors stuff off of his social media.
Yeah.
And then just to take it full circle, this morning, Shams on Run It Back said this.
This is something we've been talking about for months. For the first time in his career, really, Klay Thompson, I'm told, is open to all external options in free agency coming up. He intends to test free agency. We know the Warriors want him back. They offered him an extension before the start of the season. They're going to see if there can be a deal that gets done, but he's going to be there in the marketplace, seeking offers elsewhere. Could an Orlando step up? What team out there could step up for Klay Thompson? That is going to be the big question, but the Warriors will stay in touch with him and see exactly where he's going to end up going. If he does leave the Warriors, that call with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, that's going to be the most difficult call Klay Thompson's made, possibly.
The drama, my man.
Oh, gosh.
I will say this. I'm not sure Shams said anything that he hasn't said 2 weeks that we haven't heard for months.
We knew this was going to happen. I mean, we knew Klay was going to test the market. We know that a contract has been offered by the Warriors as of last offseason. They were hoping to avoid this situation. But Klay said, you know what? We're going to hold all these conversations. We're getting too close to the season. And here we are a year later, entering the offseason. And he's never gotten to do this before in his career. And he's a very prideful person. So I think that has a lot to do with this. One can call it pride. If you could look at it from another lens and call it ego. But whatever you want to spin it as, Klay is going to go through this process and see it through, for better or for worse. We'll see in a couple weeks, maybe a couple months.
Where's your head at with all this? I don't want to call it media, but like social media hoopla. Like, I guess it's both because clearly his people are leaking stuff about him testing free agency. I don't think that's a hard thing to speculate. Like, this is coming from his side that like he's going to test the waters, right? Mm-hmm. And then the social media stuff that's just like a show at this point. Where's your head at with all this?
It's so silly. Let me preface it by saying I understand the logic. So if anybody hears this and tries to, counter, like, no, I get the logic. Creating a hoopla within the fan base, kind of making people uneasy. It's a negotiation tactic. You see it in the NFL all the time. Bay Area sports fans are very familiar with it, with Deebo Samuel and as recently Brandon Ayuk. On Monday, he actually released a video, another really, in my opinion, stupid video talking about they don't want me back. I get the logic behind it. I just don't agree with doing that when you're an adult. Like, it's in bad faith. And especially with Klay and the Warriors, I'll just zero in on that because he's the topic, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have so much history together. Like, essentially, these people in the organization, Klay, quote unquote, like your family. Like, you spend more time around them than most of your family for most of the year. And like he's been in the NBA, what, 13 years?
He drafted in 2011, so I believe, he finished his 13th season.
13 years. Like, I mean, I've been at my current station for 6 years and it feels like an eternity. I couldn't imagine being somewhere for 13 years. So I would like kind of wish you were just above some of the pettiness, but it's clearly not. We know Klay. I know him from a professional standpoint. I know he has heavy emotions and it's easy to strike a chord and hurt his feelings. It's actually ironic that he had that quote years back regarding LeBron. This is a grown man's league. I guess his feelings got hurt. When hit dogs holler, because Klay's feelings get hurt. Klay's feelings get hurt a lot. And I'm not even trying to say that to poke fun. It's just a fact. You see it when he goes back and forth with media, when it's like an honest question that he just doesn't like and he gets super defensive. We know when his role was being questioned with the team over the last 2 years, there were very uncomfortable moments because, for lack of a better word, his feelings got hurt. So I know going into this process, Klay probably has like a vision of how he wants it to go. And I don't think it has gone completely how he saw it in his head. And I think that affects him more than it would most players. So now his ego, his pride, whatever you want to call it, and he has the right to go out and explore free agency. I would do it too, regardless. Like, just, it's cool. Oh, who wants to woo me? What's out there? I've never done this before. It's like getting recruited when you're like a high school athlete. Like, even the deep down, like, I'm going to commit to Cal. I don't want to go far. But you know what? UCLA and Arizona, they're interested. Let's take a free flight. Like, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. So I'm not mad at him. But the thing is, I'm not blaming him for that. But the thing with Klay is, I know how big his ego is and how much pride he has, for better or worse. Sometimes that's what makes him Klay, but sometimes it's a bit of a detriment. I worry that ego could be the end of this relationship if he feels slighted.
Oh, see, I don't know about that. The way I'm looking at it, I feel like the full court press, which is unlike him, like, to date, his representation hasn't really done this sort of thing. It screams to me a guy who wants an extension before free agency because they don't know what's out there. The market can be wildly unpredictable. For those who don't know, as soon as the finals end, the Warriors are formally allowed to negotiate with Klay. That's not to say they haven't been, but like, they can't sign an agreement until the finals end. Other teams aren't allowed to negotiate with him till the 30th. So, and while we all know behind the scenes stuff happens, the Warriors do have kind of a 12-day window to get something done before, a theoretical OKC or Orlando comes into the mix and throws money at him. So to me, the first thing I'm seeing with this is, let's see if I can kind of like scare them into expediting the process so we don't even have to go there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I can see that. And you just gotta ask yourself, do you think Klay and his reps will be able to force Joe and Mike's hands?
Let me ask you this. It's been reported by Shams, the offer they offered him in the offseason last year, 2 years, $48 million. So that would put him in line with when Steph's contract's up, 2026. Do you think the amount per year, because that amount's basically what they paid Draymond and Wiggins, or do you think it's the years that he's held up on? More so.
I think it's the money. I don't think it's the years.
You think it's the total package?
Yeah, okay. Because I'm not sure why he would even want to be signed. I mean, obviously, he gets security, but Steve, Draymond, and Klay, or Steve, Draymond, Stephen Draymond, and Steph, they're all in sync. I wouldn't understand why Klay wouldn't want to be in sync with them either.
Technically, Draymond is through
he's a third
2027.
year. Yeah, it's the option, right? He has the option, but we've seen Draymond's attitude when Steph isn't involved in anything.
It's still $25 million he gets to sign if he wants.
That's very true. My point is this: I just think he wants more money. Point blank, I think he wants somewhere closer to 30 million, if we're being honest.
Do you think the Warriors, if he was willing to do 2 years, do you think the Warriors, like 2 years, 60 million, 30 a year, so it moves their offer up 6 million, let's say 25%. Do you think they'd sign that? Just to be done, just to like, he agrees to only 2 years. Because I'll tell you my theory. My theory on the whole thing is they don't want to give him a 4-year deal, which just has him, because like, who knows where they're going to be in 2026. They clearly value the optionality of like pivoting to a new era. I don't know if they want to have Klay on the books for 2-3 years after that to have to do so. I think that, I don't know. I could be wrong on that. I think years are the bigger holdup.
Yeah, see, I mean, you got to look at it from both ways. I get your point with the years, and you're right. It seems like the Warriors have kind of been intentional about having some flexibility past 2 years from now. But with Klay, I think Klay would be fine with being synced up with Steph. And then Steph's a free agent, Klay's a free agent. We'll see how it goes. We'll be with this together. I think Klay wants more money. I think what matters to Klay is getting the per year money in line with people who he thinks he's as good as.
Gotcha. So like, for example, they gave Jordan Poole 31 per year. They obviously traded him, but they gave him 31 per year, 30 to 40 seems to be the going rate for second, third option scorers in the NBA, which is probably what he sees himself as. So I could see that point. I mean, Draymond's at 25, Wiggins is at 27. He probably thinks I'm better scorer than both of them. I should be at least at 28, probably at 30.
100%. I think that's how he's going to do it. He's going to be, for lack of a better word, pocket watching. He gets paid that much. Why wouldn't you offer me that? And you see that a lot in the NFL. You see these contracts that like just set standards for position groups. I think Klay really cares about how he's viewed, and he wants to be rewarded as such, whatever that is in his head. And I'm just not sure that him and the Warriors agree with it, with what that number is.
Just for context, pulled up player salaries for next season. This is pre anyone's extension. Drew Holiday, 30 million. Julius Randle, 30 million. Chris Middleton, who I guarantee you Klay sees himself as a co-equal to, 31.6. I can see why in his head, CJ, 33. I don't know. That might be stealing money, but that's a different conversation. But like, I could absolutely see how in his head, I'm on those guys' level. Why am I down here with Cam Johnson when I'm equal to, I could see the thought process to it. I mean, there's obviously a few factors to consider. I think the Warriors are where you're at with it. It's like, we've been doing this for 13 years. Is this really worth a couple extra bucks when that couple extra bucks could go to giving you more help to win more? That's probably the line they're going to play on.
And I mean, the writing has kind of been on the wall. How many times in press conferences since the season ended, whether it's Lacob, Steve Kerr, or Mike Dunleavy, say something along the lines of, we can't be this expensive and not good.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair. It's a fair point.
I just think Right. I think their mindset this offseason is to have a more efficient payroll. If we're going to be one of the highest, have one of the highest payrolls in the NBA, we better see that outcome on the floor too. And for the past couple of years, we've seen that payroll be on the top end, but we haven't seen the product on the court be on the top end. And so I don't think they want to go into another season viewing themselves as a expensive, mediocre team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think most of the fan base's perspective on it is less about how much do they pay Klay, but what does the final roster look like? And if the team determines it can only put together a team that will be above the play-in if Klay is at 23, 24 mil a year, then that's probably where the line is. They may be right, they may be wrong, but that clearly looks like it's the way that they're approaching it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple more things I want to get into with you, but before we do, I want to tell everyone about GameTime. GameTime makes getting tickets even easier and faster. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer you get to the event. Pick out any specific game or matchup, and I'd, by the way, like to mention, also works for concerts and comedy shows that you'd like to attend. And just look it up on GameTime, and you will be able to find good tickets. Example, one Mr. Bill Burr was at the Greek Theater a week ago. That was an expensive ticket. It was a very, very expensive ticket. About $200 more than I was willing to pay when I was looking at it a couple days ahead of time. So I decided to keep my eye on it on the GameTime app. Well, what do I find? Day of the event, those $400 seats, all of a sudden down closer to 150, 200. I'm like, maybe I can go. So I was actually able to pick up tickets day of, about 6 hours before the event. And I went to it, had a great time. So last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, whatever it may be, GameTime is the best way to buy your ticket. Guys, just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LIGHTYEARS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LIGHTYEARS for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by the Energy Enhancement System, or the EES system. If you haven't heard of the EES system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in the Bay Area or hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easily affordable. Interested in experiencing the EES system technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/lightyears to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/lightyears. All right, so let's take it to the other direction with Klay. All right. What kind of market does he really have out there? We keep hearing Orlando's name. Look, you don't need to be an insider to see they have a nice young team. They have zero shooting. And because they're young, most of their main guys are kind of cheap right now. Paulo Banchero, rookie deal. Franz Wagner, rookie deal. It's a logical fit if they're looking for a veteran shooter. I could see why that's there. I also want to note these are other teams with clear max space. So I'm not saying Klay's getting a max, but Philly has the room to basically get whoever's on the free agent market. Detroit also has max space. Orlando, who we mentioned, OKC, San Antonio, Charlotte, and Toronto all have the ability to generate, let's say, that 30 million in space. Let's say that's the number. They could definitely get to a high enough number in cap space to woo Klay. Outside of Orlando, do any of those teams, do they jump at you as like a Klay destination?
OKC, it would make sense, a whole lot of sense. I don't think Klay Thompson wants to live in Oklahoma City. We know how much nature and the water and some of the things that bring him relaxation and are kind of therapeutic to him. None of that is in Oklahoma City. Now, obviously, you get a contract pushing 30 per, you can figure it out. But I do not see Klay moving to Oklahoma City, just from a personal life standpoint. I think some of that stuff is important to him. It might not be on the top of the list, but it's hard for me to envision Klay living in Oklahoma City for 7 months out of the year, at least. Philadelphia, on paper, it would make sense too. I'm not sure Daryl Morey wants to go that direction. Push like the number that would kind of get Klay away from Golden State. I'm not sure Morey would be comfortable because the Sixers, they're close to winning. Obviously, there's a couple other teams in the East that are right there with them. They're all looking up at Boston. But conceivably, the Sixers are like one or two smart moves away from winning it all. And I'm thinking that they're going to be even things I've heard from people over there, Morey is going to be very meticulous about how he spends that money. He's not going to just throw a max deal at somebody because it's there and he has that money. I can see him just waiting it out until something else comes available. If he doesn't really see what he wants to see shaping up in this offseason cycle. So that really leaves to me Orlando and Toronto that are the most realistic options. I think Orlando on paper makes sense. That money stretches a little longer too in Florida because of the state tax, the lack thereof. Ocean's really in Orlando, but there's some lakes, I guess.
About 45 minutes from the ocean.
That's doable. That's very doable, especially when you have that kind of money. You get a little private car and you're right out there. But my thing is, it makes sense. The East is wide open after Boston for the most part. Like, I could see him really helping that team.
What about you're mentioning Philly a little there? Could you see Morey pivoting towards giving Klay like a big 1-year deal? If everyone's heard that they're gonna try to get Paul George. They may end up getting him. But let's say he stays with the Clippers. Let's say his contract then gets sorted there. And they're just out of options. So what if we give Klay a 1-year massive deal? And as you said, just wait it out, see what's available and kick the can to next offseason.
I can see them doing that because that would benefit them. But I'm not sure Klay wants to be a free agent again next year. Now, 2 years with the Warriors where he has that familiarity, boom, I can see that. But 1 year with the Sixers where he's also a trade chip because he has an expiring deal. Do you think Klay has, how do I say this in a respectful way where it doesn't sound like I'm mocking Klay, but for lack of a better term, do you think he has the mental capacity to play through all that? Knowing that he's a free agent again, knowing that the Sixers can flip him because he's on a 1-year deal. It's pressure. Klay, we've seen it. We've seen it over the last couple of years.
It'd also be kind of signifying you're at a different phase of your career. You're cool with being the guy who's always used as trade filler. You might play for 3 teams next year. If you do that, you might start in Philly, you might get flipped to Charlotte in December and they might waive you and you might end up signing a vet minimum for the Lakers in March, that's the type of thing that happens. Yeah. At least with Orlando, they can sell them on this is the second act of your career. We want to keep you here. Let's make a push of this over the next 3 years before you retire, whatever it may be.
Mentor these young guys.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of you financially. Orlando is, it's not the best destination in Florida, but we can get you can get to some very, very beautiful places pretty quickly. I can see that. I honestly, you've almost talked me into it too. I think it's going to be Golden State or Orlando. It's going to be one of those two teams. And with Golden State, I think for Klay, it's going to be more of a take it or leave it. Obviously, they're not going to convey it that way. You know, Klay should get more respect than that. But essentially, that's what it's going to be. We're sticking to this number. We're sticking to this number. We want you. We love you. But at the end of the day, this is also a business. I think they're more comfortable doing that too with Mike Dunleavy at the helm. Klay and Mike Dunleavy don't have this like type of relationship where if it falters, like, you know, I don't think Mike Dunleavy will lose much sleep. Bob Myers probably would have. I think these are the conversations we're having why Bob Myers left, because he just didn't think it was worth it. Didn't want to have these conversations. That he was really good at his job. Don't get me wrong, but he was so intertwined with the big three, Klay, Steph, Draymond, that the lines became blurred of being employer versus friend. Yeah. And I think, you know what I mean? So I think Bob was kind of just like, this is a comfort level that I am not comfortable with. And, you know, these are literally the conversations that he probably wanted to avoid. And I do think Dunleavy is actually better suited for it. I don't think they have this relationship that might get dinged because of this. And like, if it does get dinged, who cares? Like, Mike Dunleavy's not going to lose sleep because Klay Thompson doesn't like him.
Do you think? All right. So I'm with you. I just, when I look at the other free agent destination, look, anything can shake out. Detroit can strike out and be like, fuck it, let's just throw a bunch of money at Klay because we need to win more than 14 games next year. Like, you know, like Cade Cunningham's going to be the first rookie to demand a trade before his extension if we don't do something, you know? So like that stuff's always possible. I still think it's going to come down to how much is Orlando going to make him feel loved versus the Warriors make him feel loved in some ways. And do you think he's Orlando's top priority? Because there's also been leaks Orlando's interested in Paul George. I mean, I would assume most of the league's interested in Paul George, to be clear, but they actually have the young players plus the ability to generate the cap space to make it happen, which it's like them and Philly and maybe a couple other teams. To finish the thought, you know, OG Anunoby is a free agent as well. Maybe not as big a need for Orlando, but still a hell of a player, and one that if you're trying to, you know, if you want to make a jump, he clearly helps you. And then like Malik Monk on the Kings, going to be hard for the Kings to keep him because they can only offer him 17. He's played himself to a bigger contract. And he also fits an exact need and maybe fits better age-wise with the Magic.
Yeah, 100%. So as it pertains to Paul George, I think that's another one. I think it's Philly and LA. If he's going to leave Los Angeles, I think he would go to a team that he believes is closer to winning a championship, and I think that would be Philadelphia. I don't know if you caught him and Joel Embiid on the ESPN pregame show before game. There's already a little synergy there. Joel trolls everybody, but you see him make comments and smile, look over at Paul. I think if Paul leaves LA, it would be for Philly over Orlando, just because he would probably see them being a little closer to a title than Orlando is. OG, they need shooters, and you don't bring in OG to stretch the floor. And Malik Monk, I mean, now I do think that is a guy who could rival Klay if they're looking for a secondary scorer who can shoot the ball, and he fits more in timeline-wise. But you can look at it from the vantage point of, does Orlando want an adult in the room? Not that Malik Monk is immature. I'm not saying that, but there's a certain level of respect that Klay Thompson kind of commands, and people listen when he talks because of what he's been through, that Malik Monk just doesn't command. You know what I mean? He's a 4-time champion who has achieved a lot in the NBA. Like, when Klay talks, people are going to listen probably more intently than when Malik Monk talks. So I can see Orlando wanting to bring in Klay to have that element, to help bring the younger guys along. Because for whatever Klay is and some of the stories that have come out in the last 2 years, one thing that hasn't come out is the fact that Klay puts in the work, puts in the effort, and he can be a good example to young guys in a new situation. I know, Jordan Poole, and that was kind of a difficult commingling, coexistence between those two. No one's going to come out and say they didn't like each other or anything, but you got this young guy, young hotshot who talks like it too, kind of threatening you in the pecking order. That was uncomfortable for Klay. It was. And I think even Steve Kerr will come out and say that. But I do think Orlando would value Klay's veteran leadership. I do. And I think it's fair to say that too. I don't think Klay's done enough to ding that and look at him as a guy who can't lead young guys.
Let's do the last couple quick here. Why do you think Draymond's contract situation last year, after he punched Jordan Poole, wasn't as contentious as this? Because I think the interesting thing I'm seeing right now is like Draymond played it the same way, whereas like they offered him an early extension. He's like, no, I'm going to opt into free agency. He did, but if the entire free agency period last year felt pretty amicable, like a fair negotiation. He got his number, and it never really felt like he was leaving. You didn't hear. I mean, I know there was like minor reports Dallas and Memphis would have interest in him, and they did.
Sacramento, Mike Brown and Sac.
Yeah, but it didn't get to social unfollowing and just Shams talking about it 24/7. Really is what I'm coming down to. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it's simple. I think Draymond has that. I mean, no, I actually don't even think it has anything to do with representation. I think Draymond is more self-aware than Klay. What I've learned about Draymond, as it pertains,
the guy who podcasts 8 times a week,
as it pertains to his status in the NBA. I think Draymond is more self-aware. He understands where he is in his career. He understands what he can do and what he can't do for a team. He understands his body and where his body is. I think Draymond is like, the grass probably isn't greener. This is a situation I'm used to. I have people where I can be myself. Literally, I can just be
for better or worse.
For better or worse myself. I think Draymond understands that. And I've always when he said it without saying it in post-game press conferences. I remember one comment he just made, and it was just so telling. I was like, wow, he gets it. He was like, when you don't understand who you are in the league, you eventually are out of the league a little sooner than you probably should have been. He said that.
That's a great quote. I forgot.
He said that when he came off the bench, when he came back from that suspension in the playoffs. And it was the first time coming off the bench in like a playoff series or whatnot. And someone asked, I think it was Monty Poole asked, like, why were you okay with this? And he was like, because I got myself suspended. I wasn't in the game and we won. And we won. And I didn't want to disrupt that. I could have been like, no, I'm a starter, and I probably would have gotten my way. But I realized, and I've seen from people before me, when you don't know who you are in this league, you're usually out of it before you want to be or before you should be. So he gets it. He knows who he is. Like, that's why I think things were easy with Draymond. I'm not sure Klay, like you said, Klay's going to be looking, this guy makes this much, this guy makes that much, that I want to make as much as him. And I think that's what he's a little more focused on. I think Draymond is just like, man, look, my best days are probably behind me. My body aches, injuries flare up a lot. They let me be me. Grass ain't always greener. I think Draymond can come to those conclusions quicker than Klay can.
Also, he also understands the pecking order of scorers get paid. He's never going to be a max. Even at his peak, he wasn't going to be a max guy just because the market doesn't give maxes to 8-point per game scorers who do like defense exceptionally well. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and whereas Klay, I mean, we can go through his scoring over the years, like 60 points at 3 quarters, stuff like that. So like, yeah, he does think of himself as a higher end player in some ways. Let's end it here. Do you think he's back? What percentage chance do you put on Klay Thompson return, subject to change, Monday, June 17th.
Man, just like I told my physical therapist, asked me the same question. It's a hard one. I think it's 50-50. Like, I say yes, he's going to come back. I think throughout all the noise and, you know, some of the ploys because of an ego and the hard stance that the Warriors might take, I believe when two parties want the same thing, not always, but more than not, it ends up happening. You get through the murky waters because at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. You want to stay here, Klay, and we want you back. So they will figure it out. But I think if there's a player that can maybe mess that up, a guy who has a temperament that can mess that up, it could be Klay. Because I feel like Klay, if he feels slighted, he could shut them down. And almost like, just like off principle, like I don't like the way these negotiations have gone. I think I deserve more respect because of all I've done for this franchise. If I don't feel that love, I'm going to just go show you guys that someone else can love me. It could happen with Klay, but I'm still leaning that he's going to come back because they both want the same thing. So just get through the murkiness and figure something out that's beneficial for both sides.
Okay. I'm a little more, I'm going 60-40 he's back, but I'm going for a different reason than you. I am not convinced that there's going to be an offer out there that crosses the Warriors line. I would not be surprised if Orlando bid him up a little bit and he ended up getting a little more out of the Warriors than they're initially offering. But I really, truly believe the thing the Warriors don't want is like a 4-year, $130 million extension. Not at this age, not with those injuries, that sort of thing. I think if 2 years, 48 goes to 2 years, 52, sign it. We'll be over it. We're fine. We'll have an extra EDM show at Chase Center. We're good. You know, that sort of thing, right? Like, I don't think they're losing sleep over that. And I'm just not convinced the Orlandos of the world are going to give Klay a 4-year deal, not when they have Banchero, Franz, all those guys to pay down the line. The one part we didn't really talk about is like, everyone's a little spooked about the second apron of the new CBA. So while there is money to be spent, I just don't see teams spending it the way they used to. And I think Klay is probably going to be, he's in that tier of player who's probably 3-4 years ago, he could have got a 4-year deal out of everyone. And right now it's like 2 years is good. You're on mute. I got you.
My bad. That might be a sobering reality for Klay too.
I think also at the core of it, I think his agent is applying the pressure right now so they don't have to go through it. So they don't have to deal with, you know, Orlando could give him 3 years, $90 million, or Orlando could say 1 + 1's what we're willing to offer you.
Yeah.
Gonna make him feel two different ways. So I don't know. We'll find out. Appreciate you hopping on, my man.
Of course. And I think that the Klay situation is going to dictate the direction of the offseason.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. All right. Later, guys.